Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Educator Collaborative Spring Gathering for 2022. I'm Carrie. I'm here with Kelly and Amy, and I'm going to share a screen so we can get started. Okay, the title of our session is Empowering Student Activists, Promoting Activism Through Literature.
And sorry, John Mayer, but one day our students are going to rule the population, and I don't want to wait around for them to change the world. I hope that they can do it very quickly, and it's our job to guide them and help them change the world through activism. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, I'm Amy Pacifico. I'm a fifth grade teacher in West Orange for 32 years, maybe. And I still love my job, probably because I work with two of the best peeps. You love your job when you love the people you're with. Love the one you're with. So I'm so happy to be here tonight with both Carrie and Kelly.
I'm Kelly, and I have the honor of working with this lovely team each day. This is my 18th year teaching, and I serve as the inclusion teacher. So I get to take all these wonderful ideas and think about how we can make sure all students can access the information.
Hi, I'm Dr. Carrie Orange Jones. Amy and Kelly did not say enough about themselves, so I'm going to fill in the blanks. First, I've been teaching for 25 years, 17 of those years spent with Amy at fifth grade and fourth grade at Kelly Elementary School in West Orange, New Jersey, where I teach science and social studies, and I also teach at Montclair State University, William Patterson and Drew. Kelly is our inclusion teacher. She is a voice that is needed as an Ed Collab teacher consultant, which I've been working with the Ed Collab probably going on 3 years now. I feel as though Kelly's lens is very important. It's very significant when we talk about literacy because she provides, especially me at times, a lens that helps our children become stronger, better readers and writers. Amy, who is in her first year as an associate with the Ed Collaborative, is a future book ambassador. Her library is extensive, and she is a woman who definitely advocates for diversity in text. And you go into her classroom library, you will be overwhelmed with the different types of literature that she has in her classroom. So now that I feel better about the introduction that these two lacked, we can continue with this presentation about empowering student activists, and you get a chance to see what our day is like. It's kind of like girlfriends sitting around tonight talking about the things that we do every day, and it's an honor to do this with them this year.
And don't worry, Dr. Orange Jones, we have a sneak peek into the library in a little bit.
So again, I think this is a really important topic. How can we use text to inspire and encourage students to not only become critical thinkers and critical readers, but to actually take action and use their voice, their words, their talents to change the world? So two books that I have been very inspired by the last couple of years are by Kylene Beers and Robert Probst. The first one, in Disrupting Thinking, that book follows this BHH, or book, head, heart model, where the book kids can retell, right? Like, what exactly do they read in the book? The head part is what thinking goes on as they read, what's surprising them, what is inspiring them, what challenges or confirms my thinking. And then finally, the most important part is this heart part. And the heart part is, how do I connect to this book? What meaning does this book have for me? How is this going to make me a better person? And I think when you teach kids this model, they actually become more engaged in their reader and in their books and what they're reading. It fosters engagement, and relevance. It makes their texts relevant to them. So after Disrupting Thinking, we have another book, a follow-up book called Forged by Reading. And let me tell you, put this on your list because it is a life-changing read. Forged by Reading takes disrupting thinking to the next level. It's basically using literature to empower readers. So books not only transform our own lives, but they can also transform the lives of others. So Forged by Reading adds, so besides the book, head, heart, that book adds this action piece. So it requires readers to read, become empathetic, to walk in the shoes of others, and then use that power, use that inspiration to transform the world and take action. So on the next slide is a list of questions that really requires students to kind of think about how books change them. So again, how does this book affect me? So if you are reading about homelessness, say, oh, I just read Crenshaw, great book. And in the book, the boy is homeless. So in reading this, you would want to probe the kids, like, how can we fix this? What beliefs do I already have? Does this book allow me to change some behavior or maybe take some action? And how can I reshape the world or influence people around me? So I guess it's, we want them to have books inspire them. And later in the program, you're going to see how some of the books that we've used in class have actually inspired kids to take action. But let there not be a confusion here. So when we're talking about action tonight, it doesn't equal like do this assignment or make this recording or review for a test or this is the action you're going to do for a grade. I think the action that we're talking about is more authentic. It comes from the student's own passions and skills and
it's organic.
Yeah, organic. There's a good word.
Yes.
Right. So again, where can we start? How can we get this these ideas, this inspiration going in our classrooms? We thought we'd start with, let's have a hand for West Orange's own Marley Diaz, who is going to talk to us about the impact that a book had on her life. And she's such an inspiration, not only to us, but to our students.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marley Diaz, founder of the 1000 Black Girl Books campaign, author of Marley Diaz Gets It Done and So Can You, and the National Education Association's ambassador of Read Across America. Today, I want to talk to you about something we all know I love, reading. And not just reading as a hobby or an assignment, but instead, I want to share with you a book that played a significant role in making me the person I am today. That book is Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. Back in 2014, when I was 9, my TT Eva gifted me the book for Christmas, and I was beyond excited to read it. Since I was born, books have played an enormous role in my life. I spent hours alone in my room reading. I carried a book everywhere I went. I love books because they gave me words I could use to stand up for myself, talk about my feelings, learn about others, and feel good about myself and people who look like me. But for the first time ever, I had read a book that I did not understand, like at all. I left Brown Girl Dreaming on my bookshelf for months, upset and confused that I couldn't grasp the story. It was written in verse, which means that instead of traditional paragraphs, they were poems. The story would jump back and forth from past to present. It was rich with metaphors and similes. Later in the year, my TT asked me if I had finished the book. No, I didn't, I said with a big sigh, knowing that it would surprise her. But instead of being upset, she encouraged me to pick it back up again. After her visit, I sat on the couch and tried to read again. I finally understood it. It was the first time I had read a book that challenged my understanding. But reading it with a new understanding was so beautiful. I felt deeply connected to the story and to myself. The poetry gave me a mirror. I saw myself, and it felt like a book that told my story the first time. Although Jacqueline Woodson is older than me and has lived places I've never lived and has a big family while I'm an only child, her words made me feel like she understood me. Reading Brown Girl Dreaming helped me understand the impact having a representative book can make in a kid's life. These types of books enable the reader to dream and to discover who they are. As I face the struggles of 6th grade, I always remember the lessons I learned from Brown Girl Dreaming, and it helped me stand up for myself. When I saw a lack of diversity in the books I was assigned throughout my time in school, I became frustrated. I thought back to the book and recognized that Black girl books I knew, and I wanted Brown Girl Dreaming to be in my schools and schools everywhere. Then, with the help of my mom, I started #1000BlackGirlBooks, an initiative to collect and donate 1,000 books with Black girls as the protagonists. 6 years later, I have collected 13,000 books where Black girls are the main character. I thank Brown Girl Dreaming for sparking the light inside of me.
And by the way, her mom is Dr. Janice Johnson Diaz. She's the author of Parent Like It Matters. She's a very dynamic woman, and I follow her on social media as well.
Such
Crazy
an
that
inspiration.
it's crazy that she was just right down, came right here from West Orange. And I think that really, when we showed the kids that was so impactful to know that, Marley was just one of them in the same class that they were in. It's
And
very
right
inspiring.
across the street at the high school,
Yeah.
Right.
Hi,
So
everyone.
there we say, there it's clear, how books can inspire, and inspired Marley for the 1,000 Black Girl books. So what else can we as teachers do? These are some of the things that we're going to talk about and share with you of how we try to promote student activism in our classrooms. So we're going to talk about a little bit our classroom library. We'll talk about it, units, working it into the curriculum, using kid activists like Marley as role models, global ReadAloud, and just giving kids the space and freedom to pursue their own passions and take action. So let's start with our classroom library.
I am so excited to get to share the classroom library because we have spent so much time trying to make sure that we have a library that students are excited for. When they walk in the room, our ELA room is just set up for reading success. We have couches and comfortable spaces because we tried to make it a haven for them that they'd want to read in, because if they're in a place they want to read, well, then it's easy enough to get them started. And then we can hand them the books that then allow them to read and access the world in that sense. And so our classroom library is very diverse. We spend a lot of time looking at characters and making sure that our students are represented within the classroom novels or even picture books that we have. And so we want to make sure that our readers can see themselves in the books that we have in the classroom. We try to make sure that our books are relevant, up to date, so that we're reading current books for them so they can see kind of what's going on in the world in that sense as well. One of the things that we cherish and we find to be very sacred is our IDR, or our independent daily reading time. So I know every school is different, but our reading block, we devote at least 20 minutes where the kids come in, they know to settle in, they grab a book and they just cozy up and read. And I know that sometimes that seems like a lot of time to pull away from your block of time, but sometimes that's the only time of day some of those kids are reading, even though we encourage them to read at home. I know that when they come into that room, that's 20 minutes or so that they'll get reading in class time, which might be 20 minutes more than they got anywhere else. And so that's a time where we get to come in, we get to chat with them about books and see how these books affect their lives in some way. And we challenge them to think more deeply. So, we might take a realistic fiction and just say, well, how does this affect us? How does this change you in any way? Or even a fiction book. A fiction book can change a reader, because even though it's a animal character, let's say, we have a student right now who's doing like the Warrior series. It's cats, but she's like, but there's fighting amongst them, and they're not getting along, and she's like talking to me like they're people, but they're cats. So when you make those connections to the books, they start to see the world very differently. And so we work to get these books into their hands so that they can really take that time. And so we've had a lot of success stories this year. We had a student come up to us and just say, like, last year she read one book the entire year. I'm pretty sure she's like in the 30s right now. We can't keep up with her. We're just like giving her books and this, and she's looking for more. She, like, her parents tell me she's like, in bed with the book underneath her, like falling asleep. When you allow students to read and you give them, as you're seeing now in front of you, our library is available to the students, so they have access at any time to any sorts of books, and we work really hard to ensure that. So that's really important to us, and we spend a lot of time allowing students to have choice in what they read, because we want them to be invested in the books that they want to read. So we'll go around the room picking out a couple of books. We'll plop it next to them when they're done with the book, let them book taste and choose books that inspire them or mean something to them. And so this is what they need as readers to change. They need the opportunities to read. They need the books to read that they can then say, how does this book affect me? And then I can go out and change. So just as like yes, I'm an educator and I love what I do, but I'm also a mom, and my 7-year-old son right now is loving Dogman. And I couldn't figure out what it was about Dogman, but even Dogman inspired him to write his own graphic novel, to make my father-in-law happy because he had suffered, an illness, and the joy it brought my father-in-law was enough to make me realize that this book impacted my son enough to make that decision. And that joy is what I want to put into every child's hand, and to take control of that in some way to make a difference. So I love our library, and our Amazon cart, I'm always like, ooh, add to cart.
Too much.
To the next slide.
So another thing you might want to think about doing is, when you look at your curriculum, you might want to think about infusing a social issues or social justice unit. Not even a unit, but just like if you're doing a unit on fiction, say, you might want to think about infusing these books that tackle these social issues.
Can you just
what?
dive in? What do you mean by social issues? Let's just. Could we expand on that a little bit for our listeners?
That's
So
I'll just go teacher. That's the inclusion teacher. Break it down.
So when you say social issues, you mean students who have disabilities, maybe, right?
I talk like a river, correct.
There you go. Or we have like the book, like The Proudest Blue, and that's a girl embracing her culture, and feeling comfortable in wearing her hijab, right?
Yeah. I See You and Fly Away Home deals with homelessness, which is a tough issue. We tackled race, racial injustice, unspeakable. That was a new one for this year. That was great. The Undefeated, we loved it. You don't see it on the screen. We also have Jacob's New Dress, where
Yes.
we're talking about gender equality.
Yes.
So any of the, I mean, really anything can be a social issue, but I think making these conscious like decisions on what book you are going to put and focus on with your students is really important. I mean, you know, I've been here 30 years. It would be very easy for me to do the same book over and
Mhm.
over and over
Mhm.
again. But we work hard again to make these choices, to find these books
Mhm.
that challenge and evoke empathy and you know, and we hope to inspire kids to want to change the world by reading about these characters.
Yep.
So if you infuse these books, say, into your fictional unit, now all of a sudden, you know, you have, not only are you teaching fiction, but you're also teaching into all of these social injustices.
Important issues. Because if you think about it, yeah, you're still getting the characters, you're still talking
Mhm.
about
Right.
problems, you're still talking about all the important curriculum based
Mhm.
things, but you're choosing to use books that spark maybe some different thinking,
Mhm.
or just spark more engagement and wanting to like see how they can maybe make a change.
Yeah. It also, in a sense, addresses SEL too, because some of
Mhm.
these books might actually speak to some of the students who are dealing with some of the issues or the topics of the books address.
Yeah.
So then in that sense, it also empowers them. I remember a couple of years ago, Amy read The Front Desk, and it was part of the library. And we had a student who was of Asian descent who was so excited about this book because it was the first time he'd actually read a book that had an Asian character. And he said something to Amy about it. So sometimes not even just about the social issues in sense of sparking empathy, but it also provides students with voice in the sense that they can make a connection,
Mm.
how it relates to them in their own life as
Yeah.
well. Mhm.
Seeing themselves in books is huge. Feeling a connection to a character also matters for them.
Mhm.
But I think just as important is seeing, we talk about walking in the shoes of another, and
Mhm.
really like what it would be like if you stuttered like the boy, or what it would be like if you were homeless or you were suffering, you know, a racial injustice, or, you
Yes.
know, I think that's really important for them to see too.
Okay.
It
Okay.
opens their eyes to the world. So what we did on the writing part of this is we used kid activists
Mhm.
as role models. We looked at the work of kid activists. We looked at the way they use their voice. We looked at the way they use their writing
Mhm.
to make a change in the world. Um, of course, Marley was our number one mentor.
Mhm.
But we looked at Greta and her speech. A
Mhm.
lot of kids used Greta's words and
Mhm.
um, her tone when they wrote their essays. Malala, of course, the little girl, Bana, was a Syrian refugee, and her plea to the world to help refugees really, I think, changed the way our students thought about refugees. And it just opened their eyes to what that must be like. And then,
Mhm.
of course, our favorite kid president. I know he's older now, but we
Mhm.
still use him every year because who doesn't want to promote kindness?
Right.
Marley, I thought I'd share this because I thought it was really, the kids really liked this.
Mhm.
Marley gives us in her book, Marley Diaz Gets It Done, 15 different ways to take action. And I know some of these are probably more than like our students could tackle, but
Mhm.
it just shows them like even a small action can make a big impact.
Mhm.
Just being an upstander,
Mhm.
or using her fashion sense to make a statement, um, or just sitting down, taking a seat, protesting the way something is done. I think really kind of made um, a lot of that, like the work that these kid activists have done, kind of real to them.
Well, I feel like it also makes it attainable, because I think that
Yeah.
sometimes kids think, well, I'm just a kid. I can't
Mhm.
do anything, I can't do all these big things, but the little things are really very tangible for them. And it shows that they can access the small things to make a difference.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The other thing too, I'm sitting here looking at the list and it just resonated. Because you did the social issues unit early on in the year, I think it just is something that stayed in the back of their minds, because we recently just had students create a petition to get a crossing guard.
Mhm.
So I think that you doing it, especially at the beginning of the school year, if you're talking about timing, because now it's something that resonates and follows the student throughout the calendar year. And for them to, without our inspiration, to go and create this petition to get a crossing guard after an incident with another student, just goes to show you that Amy and Kelly in ELA instilled this idea of, social justice and standing up for each other by doing this unit. And it's not something that's a one shop stopping kind of thing. This is something that they've carried throughout the school year, and hopefully for the rest of their lives as they continue their academic careers.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, because when you think about it, some of our greatest ideas come from kids. I mean, because they see the world so differently than us. And so I think giving them that access to do it really opens up things that maybe we as adults would never think about.
Mhm.
But it's definitely that release of power, right? So you,
Mhm.
as a teacher, it's not something that you can direct. I mean, you can kind of nudge them along, but it really has to come from them. And I think we, as teachers, have to give them the space and the freedom to do the things that they are passionate about. That group that wanted to get that crossing guard, that's all they talked about for days in their form. They made a Google form and shared it with everybody. They wrote emails,
Mhm.
um, letters to the principal, to the board. So it really, if you kind of just let them go, and you'd be surprised at what they can actually do. So another thing, really the crux of how this started with us years ago, now we're
Yeah.
going a couple years back, was
Mhm.
participation in the global Read Aloud. Thank you, Pernille Rip.
Mhm.
It is still growing strong.
Mhm.
And even though our participation as far as um, connecting with other schools, so back up, Global Read Aloud is one book, one to connect the world, basically.
Mhm.
And people sign up. If you don't know about Global Read Aloud, sign up to participate. So you read a book, and then through social media, you can connect with classrooms around the world. With the same text. So
Mhm.
over the years, we've connected with California, with North Carolina, and even if it's as simple as a Padlet or a shared Flipgrid, students shared their ideas about the story
Mhm.
and predictions, and it was just fun, I think, to meet people around the world. But I guess my point is, even without that, the book recommendation that Pernille puts out every year are the most amazing books.
And they range from picture book all the way through high school. So
Mhm.
you're able to access some book in some fashion to support like your grade level. So we go for the upper elementary, sometimes middle grade books,
Mhm.
but the picture books she picks are really relevant and really important. And so it's definitely worth looking into.
And that leads us to share some of the students um, of our students and how they've taken action, being inspired by a book and kind of going out in the world and sharing their voice. So,
And funny because we just mentioned the global read aloud. So the next three examples are books
All
that
right.
came from
Yep.
the global read aloud.
So Refugee was several years ago, and I the passion and and the intensity from this story was just really amazing as we read through it together, and the students felt like what was happening within the story. And so at the end, this group of girls decided they would become the refugee team.
Yep.
And they decided to set up an a situation where they were going to raise some money to help kind of support refugees. And so they obviously, you could see Dear Kelly Families. Kelly Elementary School is the name of our school. So they wrote a letter to send home to let parents know and families know like where the inspiration came from and what their goal was. So you can see in this letter here, you know, they put themselves out there and they wanted to make a difference.
A long walk to water. So I did not have this student. I have her sibling, but I know this young lady. She's very dynamic. And this book, so let me backtrack too. Refugee is probably one of the best books that I've ever read in my entire life. But A Long Walk to Water is so good. You have to, even as an adult, you have to read these books because they resonate with you. So it's about the lost boys of Sudan. And this young lady, for her bat mitzvah project, she chose to raise money for clean water. And she, if we click on the picture, we hyperlinked, she did a fundraiser. She decided that she wanted to do something big to show how much this book changed her thinking. And she had her bat mitzvah and she wanted to do this project, which was raise money for South Sudan and help what is now known as the lost boys and girls. So she had charity events, bake sales and stands and everything so that she could raise money to help in Sudan, and especially in terms of having clean water and access to clean water, all because she read this book.
It's so hard because you don't want to give too much information away because you want everyone to go back and read these books without giving so much information. But like when you look at these projects, you can see like clearly these are big world issues in some sense as well, not just like within the confines of their little community, you know, or your little school community or in your town.
And one other thing too, what resonated with the students, we were fortunate enough, when we read Refugee, we actually have a colleague who has an uncle who was a Cuban refugee, and the similarities between him and the book really inspired the students. And then with the Long Walk to Water, we did have someone from Sudan come in. And in the next book, The Bridge Home, which is based in India, we also have a colleague who's from India who provided us with a really great lens about the positivity too. You know, The Danger of a Single Story, make sure you watch that on TED Talk. The Bridge Home did inspire the students. It's just how it happened to coincide with what's coming up next, which is the global goals. And so based on what they read with the book and the global goals, they also did a project that was related to the Bridge Home. Amy could speak to you about CRY really quick before we move on.
So we had a speaker come from CRY, Child Rights and You, from India. And after he came to speak to the students, these girls got together and decided that they were going to make, you know, those friendship bracelets, and they were going to sell them, and they were going to raise money. CRY has many different areas that you can raise money for, and so they had picked this one area, and they were actually going to be honored at the CRY dinner. That was right before the pandemic, but they were so inspired and moved by the Bridge Home. And you can see in there, they wrote announcements, they wrote letters, and you can actually hear the passion in their voice when they talk about how much this book inspired them.
So yeah, here's the announcements that they did every day when they gave facts. And they was asking for donations, and as I think you receive a bracelet. I remember this so well. It was great.
Did you know $1 is 74 rupees? They did all this research on rupees, and you know. So,
this was a
and
passion
there,
they
what they
had.
say, a small thing to you is a big thing to another child. Like, I
Ooh.
think that really hit home to them. And that's what I'm talking about, the passion that these students have, um, for something that they felt was really important to them and was inspired by a book.
Mhm. So again, when we read The Bridge Home, it just so happened to coincide with the global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. And each group, we all signed up for this. And I think 2 classes had 14, which was Life Below Water. So then that led the students to what inspired them to take on a project with the global goals. So the global read aloud being The Bridge Home, and the topic of it being India. And I don't want to give too much away, but the girls living in an area there where there was not enough clean water because they were homeless. So then the students took on the whole life below water, looking at it through the lens of the country India. And they made posters. So I'm gonna click on this and show you a couple of posters that they made. The students Save the Seas, SDG 14, Life Below Water. They talked about ocean pollution, 5.25 trillion plastic on Earth, pounds of plastic on Earth. They had the little fishies over here, please save us. And they give you facts. Plastic is the most common element found in the oceans today. It does not break down easily and often mistaken as food for the marine animals. Lots of trash is in the water, like plastic bags, bottles, bottle caps. Here's another one, keep the seas clean, save marine life. And then I love this picture, I hate plastic. And then this, please recycle H2O bottles. We must recycle because we are contaminating the sea.
So that just brings it to a more
mhm.
global aspect again. Like it's, making a small change here impacts the world in a bigger sense.
And then they did do a recycling project in the cafeteria. And I want to say some girls went and started to stop the styrofoam trays
Yeah.
that we don't use anymore because of this. And they wanted to get the paper straws, but that didn't quite happen. However, they did make a concerted effort to stop using plastic and styrofoam specifically in the lunches. Then we had a podcast. The students did this podcast, Recycling Plastic to Save Ocean Life. I hope you can hear it. I'm going to play this one about some students who got really involved in this episode. They discuss why it's important to recycle plastic and save marine life. It's a little bit long, so we're not going to play the whole thing, but just to get an idea of the, the enthusiasm. Oh, that's not what's supposed to be playing. Sorry.
Conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development.
We want to help the seas and oceans the proper way by reusing and recycling plastic.
We want to prevent overfishing, get rid of plastic in the ocean, and stop ocean pollution.
If everyone works together, the seas and the ocean's environment will finally be clean and sustainable for fish and humans.
In this podcast, we want to focus on plastic and how it is important to recycle. We must keep plastic out of the ocean. Here is some information to support that.
Plastic can kill seagulls because they eat it and it does something harmful in their stomach that makes them starve. Plastic is killing 100,000 sea turtles, birds, and fish a year.
Plastic creates pollution in the water and it can hurt or maybe even kill sea life.
By littering plastic, it can ruin many habitats of many different sea animals.
If we don't recycle plastic, it goes into the water and fish eat it. It gets stuck in their gut and they will die.
Apparently, 70% of the birds have plastic in their system, and 30% of the sea turtles have it in their system as well.
If seagulls mistake plastic for food and they eat it, it can cut off their oxygen and they will suffocate.
Plastic bags harm life underwater because they can think plastic bags are food and choke on them.
So remember to save the ocean and please don't litter in it. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
I love hearing them speak so passionately about it. Yes, they're 10, 11 years old, but they feel, they understand certain things and they want to make a difference. I love that.
And sorry, John Mayer, I don't think they're waiting for the world to change. They're
Not at
changing it
all.
right now.
Yes.
They're not listening to Chic either.
Uh, so again, we're upper elementary. We are fifth grade teachers, but in talking, we felt like even through picture books, even the youngest students can be inspired by a book to take action in their school or community to make a difference. So here's just some of the things we thought, even Carrie showed some posters, announcements. I know our school, we are allowed students can request to make an announcement in the morning, writing a letter, starting a collection. I mean, any of these small things, small community projects or school community projects can really give kids the, the power. We're releasing the power and letting them, take action in what's important to them. So the last thing I think we should talk about is, how do we find all of these great texts? How do we make sure our libraries are diverse? How do we make sure our students are reflected in our libraries? And, Kelly, you talk about how do we ensure that our libraries are also a window to the world? We talked about that today. And they say everything I need to know I learned in kindergarten. Not really. Probably from social media.
Okay.
So when you're scrolling through your friend list on Instagram, put in the search bar, reading, literacy. You'd be amazed at the stuff you're going to find in the text that people put out there. I'd like to think that I'm amazing at finding all the perfect books, but my inspirations come from those that I scroll through and find on Instagram.
And Twitter. We were gonna list them, but I mean, it's so many people. But just off the top of my head, the Ed Collaborative for one. There's so many people. You have Joella McCarthy, who's a book ambassador, and Julia Torres, Dr. Lois Marshall Barker, Lamar Timmons Young. There's so many people that I could sit here and name, and if I didn't name you, it's not because I've neglected you. It's just I could be sitting here
for hours.
For hours naming people affiliated with the Ed Collaborative. Also books that you could read and people you could follow, like Cornelius Minor. He's amazing. Dr. Goldie Muhammad. There's a couple on Instagram, literacy consultants. They have a lot of diverse books offerings. Disrupt text rather on Twitter. They're amazing too. I cannot specify enough how important it is for you to follow a lot of these people who offer so many suggestions to
put yourself out there.
A diverse and inspire you to social action. So start there. And then there's
social media is a great platform for you to put yourself out there and make requests, ask for help, and get to know amazing educators out there.
Okay.
So as you move forward and thinking about how you can empower students and inspire them to become activists, we're going to end with these words from Beers and Probst in Forged by Reading. Remind students that what they have taken to heart might inspire them to change. They might change their own actions, their own words, their own beliefs, or they might be stirred to change the world around them. So we hope that moving forward, you inspire your students through literature to change the world around them. And we'd love to hear from you.
If you're already doing something as well, tell us. We would love to hear about it. And we'd love to make this collaborative effort to encourage students to change the world.
Yeah. So there's our Twitter handles.
We hope to hear from you soon.
Oh, and there, yeah, those are just some resources that we use throughout our presentation tonight. But thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed it. We hope that you take a good look at your classroom library and fight for the funds and make sure that your library is immense and diverse and that you can empower your students to take action and change the world.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today, and happy reading.
And enjoy the rest of this Saturday. So many other presenters that you are going to get to see this afternoon. So please take a look at them. See you soon.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.